Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today, A Safe System of Work, Easier Than You Thought. My name is Catherine and I'll be your moderator for today. This webinar is designed to show you how easy it is to develop a system to manage safety in your workplace. Our presenter will run through a great tool that will help you measure your current safety performance and identify areas for improvement. Rob Moore is an inspector with SafeWork New South Wales, working in the investigations unit. He joined SafeWork in 2009 after a varied career in the private sector, most recently as operations manager of a transport and logistics company. He also likes to dabble in social media as a coordinator of the Video Safety Alert program on SafeWork's YouTube channel. So I'm just going to hand you over to Rob now, and Rob will start the presentation for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thanks for joining us. We're here today to talk about a safe system of work. No doubt you've heard the phrase before, but what does it really mean? You're already using systems in your business every day. You probably just don't call them systems. In essence, a safe system of work is really just a way of doing things safely in your business. Today's webinar will run you through the main elements of a safe system and demonstrate the fact that incorporating safety into the daily running of your business is actually not as hard as you think. We're not here to give you a ready-made safety system for the simple fact that a system needs to fit your workplace, and you know your workplace a lot better than we do. What we will talk about are the basic elements that make up a safety system, giving you the tools to develop a safety framework that works for you. So as I mentioned, your safety system needs to fit your workplace. What works for a large multinational corporation is unlikely to be effective for a business with 4 workers. Similarly, what works for a call center or a business with principally administrative functions may not work for a manufacturing environment or a business with most workers in the field or working remotely. The system has to suit your business. We often come across businesses that have bought a generic safety system because they know they have to have one. Unfortunately, the only time it comes off the shelf is when something goes horribly wrong. I would much rather see a simple system that's meaningful and that people use every day than a sophisticated system that nobody understands. Having and following a system that reflects what actually happens in the workplace is what matters most. Remember, the purpose of a safe system of work is to ensure your workers don't get injured. So there are 6 key elements that I'll be talking about today: management commitment, consultation, safe work procedures, training and supervision, reporting safety, and workers' compensation and recover at work. This is an assessment tool designed to give you a sense of where your current safety system is working and where there are areas for improvement. You'll note that the elements I mention align with the headings in the checklist. Don't worry if you haven't got one in front of you. We'll see it on the slides as we go through the presentation today. Now, when you're using the checklist, if most of your ticks are in the green, you're probably doing pretty well. Just maintain it and keep it going. If you're mainly in the orange, you're going okay, but you've probably got some work to do. And if you're in the red zone with most of your responses, there's probably a fair bit of work to be done, but that's okay because the green and the amber sections will give you some ideas of where to aim for improvement. Now let's begin with the first and most important aspect of a safe system: management commitment. I'd love to hear some of your ideas about how you demonstrate management commitment in your workplace. So please use the question box and let us know. Just type in some of the ideas that you've come up with and we'll check back in and share them with the group. Some of the key messages here. Firstly, that everyone understands their role and plays their part. This is really not just about managers and supervisors. Workers have safety responsibilities too. Another point to make is that time and money are allocated to meet safety responsibilities. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But before I do, I just want to mention the term due diligence. Now, some of you probably know what that means. If you don't, I'm not going to talk in too much depth about it today, but if you don't know what due diligence is, I'd encourage you to just grab a pen and write this down. Work Health and Safety Act, Section 27. Section 27 clearly outlines the duties of officers that go to demonstrating a management commitment to work health and safety. Now we've got a couple of suggestions here. People have talked about, Benjamin Matthews has talked about a standing desk. I guess that's a sit-stand desk that we're talking about. Colin has talked about the managing director attending all WHS meetings. Now that is fantastic. That really is demonstrating real commitment to safety. Justin talks about continued management engagement and consultation, and that's important. It's important that whatever processes you have in place, managers are feeding into that. They're not delegating that role to someone else. So look, there's some really good examples there of how management are committing to work health and safety. I'm going to give you a few examples that we've come up with about demonstrating commitment to, and in fact some of them have already been touched on there. So what we talk about is doing something. Not just talking about it. As the cliche goes, walk the walk, don't just talk the talk. And that ties in with one of the comments that somebody just made about management actually being present. And that's a really important thing. Follow the rules. Now, a good example here is if you're working in an environment, or you have an environment that you ask workers to wear steel-capped boots, and the boss comes walking through wearing a Manola Blahniks, it doesn't send the right message. So the key is practice what you preach. Budget for safety. Now there should be a safety budget, but it's also important to remember that some of the best safety solutions are the result of cost-effective innovation, not simply throwing a ton of money at a safety issue. If there is a need to spend money, it should be proportionate to the risk. Get involved. Again, buy-in from the workforce is going to be that much greater if management participate in the process. Aim high with your risk management strategies and always look for opportunities to improve. Continuous improvement is a key point. Create a WHS policy. Make sure, don't just take a generic policy. I see a lot of generic policies out there in workplaces hanging on the wall proudly. It's good to see, but make it sure it's specific to your business and signed by the managing director or the general manager. If there's a name at the bottom, there should be a signature above it. Now we're getting a lot of questions through here, and we're probably not going to have time to address them all today. I do like the point that Kylie made about who can afford Manola Blahniks, but I have seen Sex and the City, so I know what they are. Someone's asking what guidance can you provide in relation to identifying and dealing with drugs and alcohol in the workplace. And look, that's a really good point, Victoria. I think we probably won't have time to talk in too much detail about it today, but we'd be happy to provide you a response after the webinar. And it is a challenge, and I come across it all the time. Okay, we're just going to talk about, somebody's asked what was the reg number for WHS again. In fact, it was when we're talking about the Work Health and Safety Act, we talk about sections, and when we talk about the regulation, we talk about clauses. Now, the reference I gave you was actually from the Work Health and Safety Act, and we were actually talking about due diligence, which was actually section 27. So yeah, if you didn't get a chance to write that down before, due diligence is covered in section 27 of the Work Health and Safety Act. So we're going to move on to the second element now, and that is consultation. Now, consultation is key to effective safety management. In simple terms, it's a formalized process for communicating safety issues and finding solutions. But it's also important to know when to consult. It's not just about having regular conversations about how to control risk. It's also important to talk to workers before making changes that might impact on them from a health and safety perspective. We're going to talk about the consultative options in a moment. But first, I just want to highlight some key points to think about in your existing consultative model, or as you make decisions about introducing one. Again, you need to think about the unique characteristics of your workplace, including the unique characteristics of your workers. Are they mobile? What are their work patterns? Are they culturally diverse? And are there possible language barriers? These are all things you need to consider. You also need to consider whether your work has the potential to impact on other workplaces. If so, you also need a process to consult with them. So I would encourage you to reflect on how involved your workers are in safety decisions. All too often we come across businesses that have a process for hazard identification that involves workers, but when it comes to resolving the issues, management will impose a control without involving the workers. I'm going to tell you about an example of how consultation can affect an outcome. And it's not just about safety. A printing business was installing new equipment. Workers were not consulted early, but during the installation, a worker asked, "Why are you putting the end of the line there? There's no forklift access to move the finished pallets." They had to go back to the drawing board and redesign a process that almost cost them a lot of money. Your workers are the people who understand the task they're undertaking every day. They know when there's a problem, they know the process, and they probably have thought about solutions, even if they haven't mentioned them. Sometimes they just need to be asked. So what are the consultative options available to you? The slide outlines the 3 options. The first thing you need to do before you do anything else is engage with your workers to find out how they'd like to consult. If you have a reasonable number of workers, then a health and safety representative, or HSR, or a safety committee might work for you. And there's a lot to talk about there. But for the purpose of today, I'd like to talk more about option 3, which is other agreed arrangements. I want to talk about that simply because it's the most common mechanism in small business, but also the least understood. We're going to do a quick hands up now, but I'd love to know if some of you out there have other agreed consultation arrangements that are working well. So if you can just put your hands up if you've got other agreed arrangements that work well for you. We've got 28% of hands raised. So there are obviously a few of you out there who do believe, we got more, there's more going up, 30%, obviously think that your other agreed arrangements are working well, and that's really encouraging. Now that doesn't mean that everybody else's other agreed arrangements aren't working well. You may not have a system in place yet. You may be working towards developing one. You may be using an HSR or a committee option. So, but it's good to see that some of you have got some good agreed arrangements in place. Now, while we're in an interactive mode, I'd love to see if you can just shoot me some examples via the question box of what agreed arrangements you have that are working well for you. It'd be great to share some with the group. Now, Max has told us that he has a smaller site, another arrangement where a staff rep meets with the director and a WHS coordinator regularly. Now that's good. That's great. If it's a smaller site, it probably requires some unique characteristics and unique application of a consultative model. So look, I'm just going to move on, but if you can just keep shooting me some great ideas, that'd be fantastic. Oh look, they're coming through thick and fast. Morning TWHS discussion. Fantastic idea, Leah. I can't keep up. Tradesmen use toolbox talks and online dispatch message board through software. That's fantastic. Toolbox meetings are a very common scenario. Ballot box notes system from Anthony. Global communication called all hands meeting occurs monthly. That's from Justin. That's fantastic. Look, it's really good to see technology being used, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment too. There's some great options out there that weren't there 10 years ago. So it's good that people are embracing the technology, and we use a lot of that in our business today. So it becomes part of a business as usual model. Okay, so remember, other agreed arrangements still need to be articulated and maintained. So some of the examples we've got there, they seem to be, they're formal situations, and I'm sure that they're understood well by the workers, but they need to be, even though there are other agreed arrangements and they can be fairly vague in some terms in terms of what can fit into that, your business needs to articulate what your arrangements are. Whatever the agreed arrangements are, that's what you need to do. And it should be a combination of things, not just a singular communication process. So I thought some of the things have already been mentioned, but a couple of others, regular staff or production meetings. It doesn't matter what format these take, but whatever format suits your business. A suggestion box is a good mechanism for anonymous communication, and sometimes anonymous communication can be really important, giving people the option to provide some feedback anonymously. Toolbox talks, very common, brief pre-start meetings. We talked about those, some of the suggestions that came through. And again, they're great formats because they're regular, they're casual, and they encourage open, and honest communication. Now, I talked about technology before. One of the great examples I recently came across is a process that uses social media. It was a restaurant in Darling Harbour with a lot of young workers. They set up a private group on Facebook, not just used for health and safety issues, but also to explain new menu items, upcoming promotions, and so on. There was still an element of face-to-face communication to support it, but it proved to be a fantastic tool for communicating across the business using a medium that workers were already comfortable with. But also captures something else very important. Safety was just part of the conversation. It wasn't a separate discussion point. Okay, we're going to move on to safe work procedures now. Now remember, a safe work procedure or a procedure is a way of doing things safely, efficiently, and to a high quality. Some of the key points we need to make here, again, workers need to be involved. They might, in some cases, sit outside the regular consultative format, but they can still be casual. If it's a machinery process that you're developing a procedure around, do it at the machinery. If you have documented procedures, think about whether they're relevant and make sure they reflect the tasks to which they align. Are they reviewed regularly? Because processes can evolve. Also, do they suit your business? One example we often talk about is how to document procedures. Often pictures work better than words. Think about what will fit with the characteristics of your workers and the tasks they undertake. It's important not to just write a procedure because you think you have to have one. A procedure should be developed in order to outline how to perform a task safely so that workers are not at risk of being injured. So the greater the potential for risk, the greater the need for a safe procedure. Where possible, as I mentioned before, implement high-level controls and always look for opportunities to improve. We're going to look at an example now of where procedural improvements were made following an incident where a worker received an electric shock. The employer was a manufacturer of electrical components. The review resulted in a tool being developed to isolate the worker from the live component. A byproduct of this improvement was that it cut out several time-consuming steps in the manufacturing process. There were not only safety benefits, but also improved productivity. Now we're going to talk about training and supervision as the next element. Now I'm going to make a point here, so I want to do another quick hands up. So make sure your hands are all cleared if you've already hit it before, but who knows what the hierarchy of controls is? If you can just put your hands up if you know what the hierarchy of controls is. And I know that some of you are going to know it. I know that probably a lot of you are going to know it. But for those of you that don't, if you can just grab a pen, that would be fantastic. And again, I'm going to give you another legislative reference to look up for further information. Now, in this case, it's not the WHS Act, it's the WHS regulation, and it's clause 36. Okay, so it looks like about 32% of you are familiar with the hierarchy of controls. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about it today, but just to give you a bit of an understanding of what it represents. The hierarchy of control outlines the process you should go through when making decisions about controlling risk. Okay, I'm just going to say again before I move on, somebody's just asked me to clarify the clause reference. It's 36. So thanks, Victoria. It's 36 of the Work Health and Safety Regulation. Okay, so as I said, the hierarchy is the process you should go through when making decisions about controlling risk. Firstly, can you eliminate the hazard? That's the first question to ask. Can you get rid of it completely? If you can't, and often you can't, then we go through the hierarchy of minimizing risk. Firstly, can you substitute it for something less hazardous? It's an example we often look to when we talk about hazardous chemicals. Can you isolate the hazard from the person exposed to it? Are there other engineering controls that can manage the risk? Now that's design factors, physical things that can manage the risk. And the last step in the hierarchy is administrative control, such as signage, training, and personal protective equipment. Now, risk is usually best managed using a combination of controls. It's not about selecting one from the list. And unfortunately, the point that most people go to first is usually the last step, which is personal protective equipment, signage, and training, or other administrative controls. So the point I want to make is that training and supervision should support other risk management processes. This is the final step in the hierarchy and does not represent risk management in and of itself. I'll give you an example. I was investigating an incident a couple of years ago where a worker was crushed by a forklift. During the investigation, I had cause to review a range of incident and near-miss data at the workplace. The remedial action by the employer in every single incident occurrence was retrain the worker. Now, while this might be appropriate in some cases, this pointed to some significant deficiencies in the system that this was the go-to in every single case. Now, also don't confuse providing information with training. When people are new, they're given a whole lot of information and expected to remember it all. Signing off induction checklists or training modules doesn't make someone immediately competent to perform a task. And it doesn't even mean they understand what they've been told. You should reinforce the training and provide appropriate levels of support and supervision. Also, try to be a bit creative in understanding how information is remembered by workers, again, taking into account the unique characteristics of your workplace. I need to make this point too. For credibility, you need to ensure that a safety procedure is treated like any other procedure. If workers are taking shortcuts, firstly, find out why in case this highlights a system failure. If not, counsel the worker to ensure they don't continue to put themselves and others at risk. I'm going to talk about a swim school we worked with now that supports what we've just been telling you about. Now, prior to starting, swimming instructors at the swim school are required to undertake the industry standard of teacher accreditation. When they commence work, the employer provides an additional 20 hours of buddy training until they're deemed competent. The training process has safety provisions built into it. This allows for training to be tailored to each new starter's needs and means that safety issues for both workers and students are better addressed. The result is not only a safe, but a consistent teaching method. Okay, the next element we're going to talk about is reporting safety. This is another key aspect of an effective system. Your workers are best positioned to identify things that might go wrong. Employers should be encouraging reporting, free from blame, no matter what the consequence. I've actually come across workplaces that incentivize safety reporting. So workers are actually rewarded for identifying gaps in the safety system. The reporting process should be user-friendly, clear, well-articulated and encouraged. Some employers complain that workers don't raise issues, but they often haven't considered whether the reporting system is robust enough to make them comfortable in doing so. The safety reporting processes really need to tie in with the established consultative processes to work properly. Now, you may be starting to recognize a pattern across this whole checklist, this tool, the elements of a safe system, that they all feed into each other. None of them sit alone. Now, a common example of a good reporting safety system in retail is a diary system, something we come across quite frequently. And again, it's not a standalone system. It needs to support other mechanisms. But the challenges in a retail environment is that rarely are all the workers there at the same time. The work diary allows workers to pass on details, including stock issues, customer issues, and safety concerns to the next shift. It's also easily accessible by management. The system's clear, it's easy to use, and again, it allows for safety to be part of the business as usual conversation, not a standalone discussion. Now, I'd love to hear from you. I know we're getting a lot of questions through, but if you can just drop me a line if you're via the question box, if you have some innovative safety reporting processes that you'd like to tell us about that I can share with the group. So while we're waiting for those to come through, I might just make a couple more observations to consider when you're thinking about what to do. Look, one of the key ones is, do you have a mobile workforce? That's, again, provides some challenges. There are occasions where a mobile workforce can come back to get together at a certain time of the week, but it's not always possible. Perhaps a reporting process in this scenario can be as simple as a phone call. But don't forget, there needs to be supporting principles behind it. So if it's a phone call, ensure workers know who to call, ensure someone is always available to take the call, and that issues can be logged for later review if appropriate. So now Natalie's mentioned they use the iAuditor app to conduct daily WHS checklists, and they're emailed to a central place. Now that's, again, great use of technology. So I'm not familiar with the iAuditor app, but it's probably worth Googling. There's probably some other similar products out there that provide the same mechanism. I know a lot of businesses do their own, just do a paper checklist and daily walkthroughs. And that can again be channeled through to a central resource that can form part of the reporting. And again, it feeds into other processes, so it can be addressed at toolbox talks, and it can be part of the consultative rectification processes that you go through. We have another one here from Nathan. Our company has a hazard and near-miss reporting hotline and are currently trialling a smartphone app that links into our safety information management system. Again, a great app. So it's really important that all hazards and near misses are reported. We talked about before how much that can contribute to your effective management. So it's really great. Okay, so moving on, we're going to talk about the swim school again, just very briefly. And this is about a reporting system leading to some really good changes. So at the swim school, they implemented a great reporting system. They started a formal system and found that a lot of staff were having issues with voice strain and sore throats from trying to communicate in a noisy environment. So what it enables you to do by documenting these is recognize patterns. They installed some noise baffling as an engineering control, complemented by voice projection training for teachers, and also incorporated hand signals into the training, further reducing noise in the pool area. These changes came about because they noticed a pattern they hadn't seen before, and the outcome was great for business. Susan's asking, what about very small business, say one carpenter and one apprentice? What's the best way of keeping them reporting and communicating effectively and then documenting this? Look, in some respects that represents some challenges, but in other respects it's a lot easier, because it's a lot easier to directly communicate with only 2 workers than it is with a whole workforce. Sometimes it's harder to coordinate a whole workforce responding and track that effectively. But yeah, I recognise there are some challenges with it, particularly when they're focused on the work that they're doing. But look, I'd even say just a phone call every day at the end of the day. What did you face today? What did you were there any specific challenges that we need to work through for the future? Or if they have, as I said before, a phone call from them, if they come across something unique and specific they need to overcome, then just a phone call to you. I think it's important when you have workers that are a little isolated like that to check in with them anyway. It's always good to make sure that at the end of the day, everybody's going home safely, particularly if they don't have a normal mechanism for checking in. The last element I'm going to talk about is workers' compensation and recovery at work. Firstly, make sure you have a valid workers' compensation policy. Secondly, make sure your workers are aware of the policy, what they should do, and what to expect if an incident occurs. We're going to send you our help with getting people back to work poster to help with this. You can add your specific policy details and contact details and display it at your workplace if you haven't already done so. Now again, if you have workers in the field or remote workers, then this information still needs to be communicated to them, and you need to factor that into your communication. Research shows us that for 80% of people injured at work, time off work is not medically necessary. But if they do need time off, ensure you keep in touch so they don't feel isolated, and try to get them back to work as quickly as possible. Also, make sure you have meaningful, suitable duties available if they're not fit for pre-injury duties. Getting back to work improves recovery time, reduces pain symptoms, and helps injured workers return to pre-injury fitness sooner. There's a host of programs and incentives that Safe Work New South Wales offer to assist employers help their workers get back to suitable duties. Just type in the address bar of your browser, help with getting people back to work, and this will take you straight there. Now, before I say goodbye, I encourage you to print the Compliance at a Glance checklist and give it to your staff. See what they have to say. Often their analysis or assessment of your system might be different from your own. It's a subjective process, but it also points to areas where the communication is falling short. So see what your employees have to say. If you're a worker, you could take this to your committee or your HSR, or just give it to colleagues and see what they've got to say about it. And remember, if you have a lot of ticks in the red and orange, the green section tells you what you need to aim for. If you're not too sure where to start, begin with the building blocks of management commitment and consultation, and the rest will follow. Great. Anthony's just letting us know he's gone through the process of getting feedback from getting all staff to fill out the checklist. I'd be very interested in finding out what the results of that were, because, as I say, it can be a range of things that come back, and sometimes they can just point to some communication issues. So that's good. I think it's a really good process to go through. Okay, so look, next steps, ask SafeWork New South Wales for some free advice. We're here to help. Call 13 10 50 to find out how we can help you. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Rob, for presenting today. We hope you got a lot out of today's session. It certainly was good to see everyone's responses and some of those hand-free polls. So thank you very much for doing that. As Rob mentioned, we've got some good news for you. I'd like to just quickly talk to you about a couple of programs that can help you. One of them is the Mentor program, which pairs small business with a mentor business willing to share their expertise and best practice in safety. Now, if some of you are thinking about what Rob's talked about today with safety systems and you want a little bit more help, the good news is it's free. Mentors can actually help you review and improve your safety system. They can identify issues in your workplace, and they can help you develop some solutions for your business. So it's very practical based. It's not just about information. It's quite hands-on with site visits. There have been great results for participating businesses, with some of our small business mentees reporting to us that they've doubled the size of their business, and they've also gained some really great contracting opportunities due to the improved safety systems that they've been able to put in place as a result of the program. And it's also been two-way. Mentors have actually adopted some solutions from their work with mentees, such as energy efficiency saving devices and etc. Now, look, the program is really popular, so if you're interested in participating either as a mentor or as a mentee, we would encourage you to lodge an expression of interest form as soon as possible, because the next program we're anticipating is going to commence mid-year, and there will be more details available on the website. Okay, you can also see there's some other ways that you can contact us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, the address there. Well, that's all for today. And again, thank you very much for all your time and all your examples. We really appreciate it. We wish you a good day, and thanks, and come and join us again. Thank you.